My wife Megan stood in our kitchen doorway, arms crossed, that familiar look of disgust etched across her perfectly contoured face. The morning light streaming through our suburban Cleveland windows caught the highlights in her blonde hair, the same hair she spent $300 maintaining every 6 weeks while lecturing me about my wasteful $20 haircuts. "Practicing," I said, not looking up from my coffee, "for when you're gone." The silence that followed was beautiful. Pure, crystalline silence that I'd been craving for months. Megan's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for water. For once in our 8-year marriage, she had nothing to say. "I'm Alex Warren, 38 years old, district manager for a chain of mid-scale restaurants called Copper Kettle. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps us in this nice 4-bedroom colonial in Westlake. Megan calls it playing waiter in a suit, which she thinks is clever. She's said it at dinner parties, family gatherings, and once memorably at my own birthday celebration in front of my parents. "You can't talk to me like that," she finally managed, her voice rising to that pitch that made our neighbor's dog start barking. "Like what? Honestly?" I set down my mug and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married had been funny, ambitious, supportive. This woman was a stranger wearing Megan's face. "You asked why I'm cold," I answered. "That's not an answer. That's what?" I stood up, and at 6'2", I had the advantage of looking down at her. "That's me finally responding to years of your commentary? Alex, why can't you dress better? Alex, why don't you make more money? Alex, why can't you be more like Dominic?" Her face flushed red at the mention of Dominic Reyes, her best friend Susie's husband. The guy was everything I apparently wasn't: broad shoulders, tattooed arms, a job at the Ford plant that somehow made him more masculine than my management position. I never said, "You said it last week, at Richard's barbecue." "At least Dominic works with his hands." I picked up my briefcase and keys. "I work with my brain, Megan. I know it's a foreign concept." The kitchen fell silent again, except for the hum of our stainless steel refrigerator, the one Megan had insisted we buy to keep up with the Joneses, whoever the hell they were. Megan worked as a social media consultant, which meant she helped local businesses post pictures of their products on Instagram and Facebook. She called herself an influencer marketing strategist and charged small companies $2,000 a month to do what teenagers did for free. But somehow, my job managing 12 restaurants and 43 employees was beneath her. "I'm going to work," I said, heading for the garage. "Try not to practice being alone too hard while I'm gone." The drive to my office gave me time to think. When had everything gone so wrong? When had the woman who used to laugh at my jokes started rolling her eyes at everything I said? When had she stopped being my partner and started being my critic? I knew exactly when. It was 6 months ago, when Megan joined CrossFit Westside and met the crew. Suddenly she was part of this tight-knit group of fitness fanatics who measured their worth in deadlift numbers and protein shake recipes. Dominic was their unofficial leader, the guy who'd been doing CrossFit since before it was cool, who posted shirtless gym selfies that made all the suburban moms swoon. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard Conrad, my best friend since college, and the only person who still found my sarcasm amusing. "Emergency coffee meeting, Panera on Detroit Road, now." Richard was waiting in our usual booth, looking like he'd been up all night. His normally perfect hair was disheveled, and his shirt was wrinkled. Richard worked in marketing for a medical device company and was usually more put together than a magazine ad. "You look like hell," I said, sliding into the booth. "Thanks. You look like you want to murder someone." "Just my wife. What's the emergency?" Richard glanced around the restaurant, then leaned forward. "Nikki heard something at yoga yesterday, about Megan." My stomach dropped. Nikki was Richard's wife, a sweet woman who taught elementary school and minded her own business. If Nikki was gossiping, it was serious. What kind of something? The kind that involves Dominic and a lot of after-hours gym sessions. I stared at him. Are you telling me what I think you're telling me? I'm telling you that Susie Reyes has been asking around about divorce lawyers, and that Megan's been posting gym selfies at 10 p.m. when she tells you she's at book club. The coffee in my mouth turned bitter. Book club ends at 9. Yeah. Well, CrossFit Westside apparently stays open later for special members. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Megan's Instagram. Sure enough, there were the late-night gym photos. Megan in her tight workout clothes, always with the same group of people. Always with Dominic front and center, his arm casually draped around her shoulders. How long have you known? Nikki told me yesterday. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you. Richard ran his hand through his hair. Look, maybe it's nothing. Maybe they're just friends. Friends don't take mirror selfies together at 10 p.m. No, Richard agreed. They don't. I scrolled further back through Megan's posts. The photos told a story I'd been too blind to see. Megan gradually getting fitter, more confident, more distant from me. Dominic appearing more frequently in her posts. Comments from other gym members about what a cute couple they made, followed by laughing emojis that weren't really laughing. There's something else, Richard said quietly. Nikki's throwing a Halloween party next weekend. She already invited you guys. And? And she also invited Dominic and Susie, before she knew about this. I looked up from my phone. So, we're all going to be in the same room? Unless you want to skip it. No. I pocketed my phone and stood up. I think it's time I met this Dominic properly. The Conrad house was packed with people in costumes ranging from creative to ridiculous. Richard had gone as a vampire, complete with fake blood and a dramatic cape. Nikki was a witch, which was ironic since she was the sweetest person I knew. I'd chosen a simple pirate costume, black pants, white shirt, and a plastic sword that I was beginning to think might come in handy. Megan had spent 2 hours getting ready, transforming herself into some kind of sexy cat burglar. Black leather pants, a tight black top, and a mask that covered half her face. She looked incredible, and she knew it. Try to have fun tonight, she'd said in the car. Maybe if you smile once in a while, people will actually want to talk to you. I'll do my best to be charming, I'd replied, though I know it's hard to compete with your gym friends. She'd given me a sharp look, but said nothing. Now, standing in Richard's living room with a beer in my hand, I watched my wife work the room. She was animated, laughing, touching people's arms when she talked to them. She was the Megan I'd fallen in love with, except none of that energy was directed at me. Alex! A booming voice made me turn. Dominic Reyes approached with his arms spread wide, like we were old friends. He was dressed as a gladiator, which gave him an excuse to show off his muscled chest and arms. His dark hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and his beard was perfectly trimmed. He looked like he'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. Dominic. I shook his hand, noting his unnecessarily firm grip. Nice costume. Thanks, man. Megan helped me pick it out. He grinned, showing perfect white teeth. She's got great taste. Yes, she does. I took a sip of my beer. Usually. If he caught the insult, he didn't show it. You know, we should hang out more. Megan's always talking about you. All good things, I hope. Oh, absolutely. She says you work really hard. Long hours, lots of responsibility. He clapped me on the shoulder. Must be tough being away from home so much. The implication was clear. While I was working, he was keeping my wife company. Someone has to pay the bills. True, but you know what they say. All work and no play. He gestured around the party. When's the last time you and Megan went out? Just the two of you? I tried to remember. It had been months since we'd done anything together that didn't involve other people or some obligation. We're both busy. That's what I told her. I said, Megan, you and Alex need to make time for each other. But you know how it is. People grow apart. Do they? It happens to the best of us. Look at me and Susie. We've been married 10 years and sometimes it feels like we're roommates. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. That's why it's important to have friends, people who understand you. I looked across the room and spotted Susie Reyes by the snack table. She was dressed as a nurse, but there was nothing sexy about her costume. She looked tired, older than her 35 years. While her husband held court with a group of admirers, she stood alone, mechanically eating chips. Speaking of Susie, shouldn't you be talking to her instead of me? Dominic glanced at his wife and shrugged. She's fine. She's got her friends. He nodded toward a group of women that included Megan. They keep each other entertained. I watched the women's group, noting how animated they were. Megan was telling some story that had them all laughing. Whatever she was saying, it was hilarious. What's so funny over there? I asked. Who knows? Wife stuff. They probably talking about us poor husbands. Dominic laughed, but there was something forced about it. Women, right? Right. The conversation continued for another few minutes, with Dominic making increasingly obvious comments about how lucky he was to have such good friends, how important it was for people to connect, how life was too short not to pursue happiness. By the time he excused himself to get another drink, I wanted to punch his perfect teeth down his throat. Instead, I wandered toward the kitchen, hoping to find some peace and quiet. Richard was there, refilling the ice bucket. Having fun? He asked. Your friend Dominic is a real charmer. He's not my friend. Nikki invited him because Megan asked her to. Richard straightened up. How bad was it? He basically told me that people grow apart, and it's important to have friends who understand you. Subtle. Like a brick through a window. I leaned against the counter. The guy's practically advertising that he's sleeping with my wife. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, loud laughter erupted from the living room. Through the kitchen doorway, I could see Megan and Dominic by the fireplace. She was adjusting his gladiator costume, her hands lingering on his chest. He was looking down at her with an expression that was definitely not platonic. I'm going to get some air, I said. The backyard was quieter, with only a few smokers and a couple having an intense conversation by the garden. I found a chair near the deck and sat down, trying to process what I was seeing. My marriage was falling apart, and everyone seemed to know it except me. Alex? I turned to find Nikki approaching, her witch hat slightly askew. She looked concerned. Are you okay? You look upset. Just tired, long week. She sat down in the chair next to mine. Richard told me about the situation. What situation? Don't play dumb. We've all seen the Instagram posts, the gym selfies, the way they look at each other. She sighed. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. What was there to say? My wife is having an affair with her best friend's husband? I think I needed to figure that out myself. Are you going to confront her? I don't know. What's the point? She'll just deny it, and I don't have proof. Nikki was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a small USB drive. Actually, you do. I stared at the drive. What's on it? Security footage from our bedroom camera. From the last party we had here, 3 weeks ago. She looked uncomfortable. I only found it because I was reviewing the footage after someone broke one of our lamps. I saw them go upstairs together. My hands were shaking as I took the drive. How long were they up there? 20 minutes. And Alex? Susie was watching from the hallway. She saw the whole thing. The USB drive felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Why are you giving this to me? Because you deserve to know the truth. And because Richard is worried about you. She stood up. Whatever you decide to do, we're on your side. I pocketed the drive and went back inside. The party was in full swing, with people dancing to music that was too loud and drinking too much. I found Megan in the living room, still talking to Dominic. They weren't touching now, but there was an intimacy in the way they stood close together, the way they leaned in to hear each other over the music. Megan, I called out. We should go. She looked annoyed. Already? It's only 10:30. I have an early meeting tomorrow, so take an Uber. I'm having fun. I'm sure you are. I looked directly at Dominic. But I'd like to go home with my wife. The emphasis on wife made Dominic's jaw tighten. Hey man, we're just talking. I'm sure you are. I moved closer, using my height advantage. Talking about what? Alex. Megan's voice carried a warning. Don't make a scene. I'm not making a scene. I'm having a conversation with my wife's friend. I smiled at Dominic, but there was nothing friendly about it. We were just discussing how important it is for married people to spend time together. Isn't that right, Dominic? Look, I don't want any trouble. No trouble. Just a friendly reminder that some friendships have boundaries. I stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear me. And some husbands have limits. For a moment, I thought he might take a swing at me. His hands clenched into fists and his muscles tensed. But we were surrounded by people, and he was smart enough not to start a fight in someone else's house. I think there's been a misunderstanding, he said loudly enough for others to hear. I don't think there has. I turned to Megan. Get your coat. We're leaving. The ride home was silent except for the sound of Megan's angry breathing. She stared out the passenger window, her arms crossed, radiating fury. That was embarrassing, she finally said as we pulled into our driveway. For who? For me. For you. For everyone who had to watch you act like a jealous caveman. I turned off the engine and looked at her. Am I wrong to be jealous? Yes, Dominic is a friend, that's all. A friend who helps you pick out his costumes? A friend you take gym selfies with at 10 p.m.? Those are group photos. Are they? I pulled out my phone and showed her one of her Instagram posts. This looks pretty cozy for a group photo. She glanced at the screen and looked away. You're being paranoid. Am I? Then you won't mind if I ask Dominic about your friendship? Ask him whatever you want. We have nothing to hide. Good. Because I plan to. Inside the house, Megan went straight upstairs without another word. I heard the bedroom door slam, followed by the sound of her moving around, probably getting ready for bed or texting her friends about what an ass her husband had made of himself. I went to my home office and closed the door. The USB drive sat on my desk like a loaded gun. Whatever was on it would change everything. Once I watched it, there would be no going back to pretending everything was fine. I inserted the drive into my computer. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. I fast-forwarded through hours of empty hallway until I found what I was looking for. There was Megan, still in her black cat burglar costume, leading Dominic by the hand toward Richard and Nikki's guest bedroom. They disappeared inside, and the timestamp showed they stayed for exactly 18 minutes. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what happened next. Susie Reyes appeared in the hallway, moving quietly toward the bedroom door. She stood there for a moment, listening, then pressed her ear against the wood. The expression on her face wasn't anger or surprise. It was resignation, like she was watching something she'd seen before. After a few minutes, Susie walked away. She didn't storm off or break down crying. She just left, like she was tired of watching her husband cheat on her with her best friend. I sat back in my chair, staring at the frozen image on my screen. My marriage was over. The only question now was what I was going to do about it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office, watching the security footage over and over, looking for details I might have missed. Each viewing made it worse. The way Megan looked at Dominic, the way she touched his arm, the way she led him to that bedroom like she'd done it before. By morning, I had a plan. Megan was already gone when I came downstairs. Her coffee mug was in the sink, and there was a note on the counter. Gym at 6 a.m., then brunch with the girls. Don't wait up. The girls. I wondered if that included Susie, or if Susie had been quietly excluded from the group that was covering for my wife's affair. I called in sick to work, the first time I'd used a sick day in 2 years, and spent the morning doing research. I created fake social media accounts and started following everyone in Megan's gym crowd. I reverse-searched phone numbers and addresses. I learned more about my wife's secret life in 3 hours than I had in 6 months of living with her. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined. The affair wasn't new. Based on the social media posts and tagged locations, Megan and Dominic had been meeting regularly for at least 4 months. They'd been to restaurants together, hiking trails, even a weekend trip to Cedar Point that Megan had told me was a girls' retreat. But the most damning evidence was in the comments on their photos. Other gym members were openly joking about their relationship. When are you two going to make it official? Hottest couple at CrossFit West Side. Poor Alex and Susie don't know what they're missing. Everyone knew. Everyone except me and apparently Susie, though after seeing that security footage, I wasn't sure about her either. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. You okay? Heard you called in sick. Fine, just needed a day off. Want to talk? Not yet. I spent the afternoon planning my next move. I could confront Megan directly, but she'd just deny everything and get better at hiding it. I could hire a private investigator, but I already had enough evidence. I could file for divorce, but that felt too easy, too clean. No, what I wanted was for Megan and Dominic to face consequences for what they'd done. Not just to me, but to Susie, to their friends, to everyone who'd been watching their little soap opera unfold. I wanted them to be embarrassed, humiliated. I wanted them to feel the same gut-wrenching shame I'd felt watching that security footage. At 5 p.m., I drove to CrossFit West Side. The gym was in a converted warehouse, all concrete floors and exposed beams. Through the windows, I could see people lifting weights and doing complicated exercises that looked more like torture than fitness. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. At 6:15, Megan and Dominic emerged together, both sweaty and laughing. They stood by Dominic's truck, a lifted Ford F-150 with custom wheels and a sound system that probably cost more than my car, talking in the way that people do when they don't want the conversation to end. Finally, Dominic leaned down and kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, but a full, passionate kiss that lasted long enough for me to take several photos with my phone's zoom lens. When they separated, Megan looked around nervously, like she was worried someone might see them. Too late for that. I followed Dominic home, keeping my distance. He lived in a subdivision called Maple Heights, in a house that was bigger and newer than mine. His truck was parked in the driveway next to a Honda Civic that I assumed belonged to Susie. Through the front window, I could see into their living room. Dominic was on the couch, still in his gym clothes, scrolling through his phone. There was no sign of Susie. I sat in my car for an hour, watching and thinking. This man had been in my house. He'd eaten my food, drunk my beer, and made small talk while planning to steal my wife. He'd looked me in the eye and talked about the importance of friendship while betraying his own marriage and mine. The anger I'd been suppressing for months finally boiled over. I got out of my car and walked to Dominic's truck. The keys were in the ignition. Who leaves their keys in their car? Someone who's never had to worry about consequences, that's who. I started the truck and drove it to the end of the street, parking it behind a dumpster where it wouldn't be found until morning. Then I walked back to his house and rang the doorbell. Dominic answered in a bathrobe, his hair wet from a shower. Alex, what are you doing here? Looking for my wife. She's not answering her phone. She's not here. He glanced over his shoulder. Why would she be here? I don't know. You tell me. I pushed past him into the house. Megan, are you here? Dude, you can't just... Can't what? Look for my wife in another man's house? I turned to face him. Where is she, Dominic? I don't know. Probably at home. She's not at home. I checked. I looked around the living room. It was neat, modern, expensive. The kind of place Megan always said she wanted. Nice house. Must be doing well at the plant. Look, I don't know what you think. I think you're sleeping with my wife. I said it calmly, matter-of-factly. I think you've been sleeping with her for months. I think everyone at that gym knows about it except me. His face went red. That's crazy. Is it? Then explain this. I showed him the photos from the gym parking lot. Explain why you're kissing my wife. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it. Then his expression changed, became defiant. You want to know the truth? Fine. Megan's unhappy. She has been for years. You ignore her, you take her for granted, and you treat her like she's not even there. So you decided to help her feel better? I decided to be there for her when her husband wouldn't. How noble. I stepped closer. And where's your wife while you're being so supportive? Susie and we have an understanding. Do you? Because she didn't look very understanding in that security footage. His confident expression faltered. What security footage? The footage of you and Megan in Richard's guest bedroom, with Susie watching from the hallway. I smiled. Did you think no one would notice? You're lying. Am I? Ask Susie. Ask her how long she's known about your affair. Ask her how it feels to watch her husband and her best friend betray her. Dominic's hands clenched into fists. Get out of my house. Gladly. But first, let me give you some advice. I moved close enough that he could smell my aftershave. Stay away from my wife. Stop texting her. Stop meeting her at the gym. Stop pretending to be her friend. Because if you don't, I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. You threatening me? I'm promising you. I headed for the door. Oh, and you might want to check on your truck. I think someone moved it. I left him standing in his doorway and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, looking up and down the street for his missing truck. It was a small victory, but it felt good. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control. When I got home, Megan was waiting in the living room. She was still in her gym clothes, her arms crossed, her face furious. What did you do? She demanded. When? Don't play dumb. Dominic called me. He said you went to his house and accused him of having an affair. I didn't accuse him. I stated a fact. It's not a fact. It's a delusion. She stood up, towering over me in her anger. You're losing your mind, Alex. You're seeing things that aren't there. Am I? I pulled out my phone and showed her the parking lot photos. What am I seeing here? She glanced at the screen and looked away. It was just a kiss goodbye. Friends kiss. Friends don't kiss like that. You're taking it out of context. What context would make it appropriate for you to kiss another man? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned away and stared out the window. I want you to apologize to Dominic. No. Alex. No. I'm not apologizing for catching my wife with another man. I'm not apologizing for being angry about it. And I'm not apologizing for confronting the man who's been screwing my wife behind my back. She spun around, her face red with fury. Nothing happened. Prove it. How am I supposed to prove a negative? Stop seeing him. Stop going to that gym. Stop texting him and meeting him and taking pictures with him. I sat down on the couch. If it's really nothing, it should be easy to give up. I'm not giving up my friends because you're paranoid. Then I guess we have a problem. She stared at me for a long moment. Yes, she said finally. We do. That night she slept in the guest bedroom. I lay awake in our king-size bed, staring at the ceiling and planning my next move. The gloves were off now. Megan knew that I knew, which meant she'd either end the affair or get better at hiding it. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her what a real player looked like. The next morning, Megan was gone before I woke up. No note this time, just an empty coffee pot and the lingering scent of her perfume. I checked her Instagram and found a new post, a gym selfie with the caption, "Starting the day right with my favorite people." The photo showed her with 3 other women from CrossFit, all of them flexing and smiling. Dominic wasn't in the picture, but he'd liked it within minutes of posting. I screenshot the image and saved it to a folder I'd created called Evidence. Then I got dressed and drove to work, where I spent the morning pretending to care about quarterly reports and staffing schedules while planning my wife's downfall. At lunch, I drove to Susie Reyes's workplace. She was a receptionist at a dental office in Rocky River, a job that probably didn't pay much, but gave her health insurance. I'd looked her up online and learned that she'd been married to Dominic for 10 years, had no children, and according to her sparse social media presence, spent most of her free time reading and watching Netflix. She was eating a sandwich in her car when I knocked on the passenger window. She looked startled, then confused when she recognized me. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you." I gestured toward the passenger seat. "Can I sit down?" She hesitated, then unlocked the door. "Is everything okay?" "No, nothing's okay." I settled into the seat and looked at her. Up close, she looked tired and older than her 35 years. "How long have you known?" "Known what?" "About Dominic and Megan." Her face went pale. "I don't know what you mean." "Yes, you do. I saw the security footage from Richard's party. You were watching them go into that bedroom." For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then her shoulders sagged, and she looked down at her hands. 6 months. 6 months. I felt sick. How? I found texts on his phone. Pictures. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. Megan was sending him gym selfies with messages. What kind of messages? The kind married women don't send to other women's husbands. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, people were walking to and from restaurants, living their normal lives while ours fell apart. "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. "What was I supposed to say? Hey, Alex, your wife is sleeping with my husband?" She laughed bitterly. I kept hoping it would end on its own. But it didn't. No, it got worse. They got bolder, started meeting at hotels, going on weekend trips. She looked at me. "Did you know Megan told Dominic that you two haven't been intimate in months?" I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. She told him that? She told him a lot of things. How unhappy she is, how you don't understand her, how she wishes she'd married someone more ambitious. Ambitious. That's the word she used. Susie crumpled up her sandwich wrapper. "I'm sorry, Alex. I know this hurts. What hurts is that everyone knew except me. What hurts is that my wife has been making me look like a fool for months while I worked overtime to pay for her gym membership and her clothes and her car." "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to destroy them." I said it calmly, like I was discussing the weather. "I'm going to make sure everyone knows what they've done. I'm going to ruin their reputations, their friendships, their comfortable little fantasy." Susie stared at me. "How?" "I haven't decided yet, but I have some ideas." I opened the car door. "The question is, do you want to help me?" I don't know. Think about it. You have my number." I got out of the car, then leaned down to the window. "By the way, Dominic told me you two have an understanding about his affair. Is that true?" Her face flushed red. "No, we don't have an understanding. We have a mortgage and shared debt and a life that's too complicated to just walk away from." "I see. Well, if you change your mind about that life, let me know." I drove back to work feeling like I'd accomplished something important. Susie was an ally now, or at least a potential one. She had access to Dominic's phone, his computer, his schedule. She knew things that could be useful. That evening, I came home to find Megan in the kitchen, cooking dinner. She was making my favorite meal, grilled chicken with roasted vegetables, which immediately made me suspicious. "You're home late," she said without looking up. "Busy day. This smells good. I thought we should talk about yesterday." I sat down at the kitchen island and watched her work. She was still beautiful, still graceful in the way she moved around the kitchen. It was hard to reconcile this woman with the one who'd been betraying me for months. Okay, let's talk. She plated the food and sat down across from me. I think you're having some kind of midlife crisis. You're seeing threats that aren't there, imagining problems in our marriage that don't exist. Am I? Yes. And I think you should talk to someone. A therapist, maybe. I took a bite of chicken. It was perfectly seasoned, cooked exactly the way I liked it. You think I'm crazy. I think you're stressed. You work too much. You don't have hobbies. You don't have friends besides Richard. She reached across the table and touched my hand. When's the last time you did something just for fun? I don't know. When's the last time we did something together just for fun? She pulled her hand back. That's not fair. Isn't it? You spend every evening at the gym or out with friends. You post pictures of yourself with other people but never with me. When people ask about your husband, what do you tell them? I tell them you're busy with work. Do you? Or do you tell them I'm boring and unambitious and that you wish you'd married someone else? Her face went white. Who told you that? Does it matter? The point is, you said it. I set down my fork. You've been telling people, telling him that you're unhappy in our marriage, that I'm not enough for you. Alex, don't lie to me anymore. I stood up. I know about Dominic. I know about the hotels and the weekend trips and the text messages. I know everything. She sat there for a moment, staring at her plate. Then she looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not guilt or shame, but defiance. So what if I did? She said. So what if I found someone who appreciates me? Someone who makes me feel alive again? So what if you did? I repeated her words slowly. So what if you broke your marriage vows? So what if you betrayed your best friend? So what if you made me look like an idiot in front of everyone we know? You made yourself look like an idiot, with your jealousy and your paranoia and your complete inability to see what was happening in your own marriage. What was happening was that my wife was cheating on me. What was happening was that I was dying inside. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. Do you have any idea what it's like to be married to someone who takes you completely for granted? Who comes home and grunts hello and falls asleep watching TV? So you decided to sleep with Dominic Reyes. I decided to feel something again, to remember what it was like to be wanted, to be desired, to be with someone who actually notices when I walk into a room. And his wife? Did you think about her while you were feeling so alive? For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. Susie and Dominic have problems. She knows that. She knows her husband is cheating on her with her best friend. Yeah, I'd say that's a problem. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You're sleeping with another woman's husband. There's nothing complicated about that. Megan crossed her arms. What do you want, Alex? Do you want me to apologize? Do you want me to promise it won't happen again? Do you want me to go to counseling and pretend that our marriage is worth saving? I want you to face the consequences of what you've done. What consequences? I smiled. You'll see. That night, she slept in the guest room again. I lay in bed, listening to her move around, probably texting Dominic about our conversation. Let her. Let them both think they were in control. Tomorrow, I'd show them what consequences look like. I woke up at 5 a.m. with a plan that was both simple and devastating. If Megan and Dominic wanted to flaunt their affair, I'd give them a platform they'd never forget. CrossFit Westside was hosting their annual Fittest Couple competition that weekend. I'd seen the flyers around town and the posts on social media. 20 couples would compete in various fitness challenges, with the winners getting a year of free membership and their photo on the gym's wall of fame. Megan had mentioned it weeks ago, saying she wished we could enter, but knowing I'd never agree to public humiliation in the form of burpees and rope climbing. What she didn't know was that Dominic had convinced the gym owner to let him compete with a guest partner, since Susie refused to participate. I'd learned this from Susie, who'd called me the night before with information that proved she'd decided to join my campaign of revenge. He's been training extra sessions with Megan. she'd told me. They think they're going to win. Are they registered as a couple? Not officially. The entry form lists them as fitness partners, but everyone knows what that means. Perfect. If they wanted to compete as a couple, I'd make sure the whole town knew exactly what kind of couple they were. I spent Friday night preparing. I created a PowerPoint presentation with screenshots of their social media posts, the photos I'd taken in the gym parking lot, and text message conversations that Susie had forwarded to me. The messages were damning. Explicit discussions of their relationship, cruel comments about me and Susie, and detailed plans for future meetings. But the centerpiece was the security footage from Richard's party. I'd edited it down to the essential moments. Megan leading Dominic to the bedroom, Susie watching from the hallway, and the timestamp showing exactly how long they'd been inside. On Saturday morning, I dressed carefully in khakis and a polo shirt, the kind of outfit that would help me blend in with the other spectators. I loaded my laptop and a portable projector into my car, along with extension cords and a wireless remote. The competition was being held at CrossFit Westside, with the garage doors open to accommodate the crowd of family and friends. I arrived early and found a spot in the back where I could set up my equipment without being noticed. Megan and Dominic were among the first competitors to arrive. They were wearing matching black workout clothes and looked like they'd stepped out of a fitness magazine. Megan's hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail, and Dominic's muscles bulged impressively as he warmed up. They moved together with an easy familiarity that made my stomach turn. This wasn't just an affair. They were a couple in everything but name. The way they spotted each other during practice lifts, the way they shared water bottles and towels, the way they touched each other's arms and backs with casual intimacy. I spotted Susie in the crowd, standing alone near the entrance. She looked miserable but determined. When she saw me, she nodded slightly. The competition began with a series of individual challenges: pull-ups, box jumps, kettlebell swings. Megan and Dominic excelled at everything, their scores putting them in first place after the first round. The crowd cheered for them, and I heard several people comment on what a perfect match they were. "They should just get married," someone behind me said, laughing. "Maybe they will," came the reply, "once they dump their current spouses." I waited until the lunch break, when everyone was gathered in the gym's common area, eating sandwiches and discussing the morning's events. The gym owner, an enthusiastic woman named Tracy, was giving a speech about fitness and community when I made my move. I connected my laptop to the gym's projection system, the same system they'd been using to display scores and replay highlights. Within seconds, my presentation was loading on the large screen that everyone had been watching. "Excuse me," I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have something to share about two of your competitors." The room went quiet. Tracy looked confused, then annoyed. "Sir, this isn't the time for—" "I think it is." I clicked the remote, and the first slide appeared on the screen. It was a photo of Megan and Dominic kissing in the gym parking lot, with the date and time clearly visible. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Megan's face go white, saw Dominic start pushing through the crowd toward me. "This is Megan Warren and Dominic Reyes," I announced, my voice carrying clearly in the sudden silence. "They're competing today as fitness partners, but as you can see, their partnership extends beyond the gym." I clicked to the next slide. Screenshots of their text messages. The explicit content was blurred out, but the tone was unmistakable. These messages were sent over the past 3 months, while both Megan and Dominic were married to other people. "Turn it off!" Megan screamed from across the room. "Turn it off right now!" "Why? Aren't you proud of your relationship?" I clicked to the next slide, the security footage. This was taken at a party 3 weeks ago. That's Megan leading Dominic to a bedroom, and that's Dominic's wife, Susie, watching them betray her. The room erupted. Some people were shouting at me to stop. Others were pulling out their phones to record the chaos. I saw Tracy frantically trying to disconnect the projector, but I'd locked the laptop with a password. Dominic finally reached me, his face red with rage. "You son of a bitch!" He swung at me, but I was ready for it. I ducked under his punch and shoved him backward into a rack of weights. He stumbled but didn't fall, and for a moment I thought he might try again. "Go ahead," I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Hit me. Show everyone what kind of man you really are." He looked around the room at the dozens of people watching, recording, judging. His fists were still clenched, but he didn't swing again. "This is my wife's lover," I announced to the crowd. "Dominic Reyes, who's been cheating on his wife of 10 years with my wife of 8 years. They've been meeting in hotels, going on weekend trips, and lying to everyone who cares about them." "Stop it." Megan had pushed through the crowd and was standing next to Dominic, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Alex, just stop." "Why should I stop? You didn't stop when you were destroying our marriage. You didn't stop when you were betraying your best friend. You didn't stop when you were making me look like a fool in front of everyone we know." I clicked to the final slide, a photo of our wedding day with Megan in her white dress, smiling and beautiful, and promising to love and honor me until death do us part. "This was 8 years ago," I said. "Back when my wife's promises meant something, back when she was someone I could trust and respect and love." The room was completely silent now, except for the sound of Megan crying. "I'm not asking for sympathy," I continued. "I'm just making sure everyone knows the truth about the couple you've been cheering for. Megan Warren and Dominic Reyes, adulterers, liars, and the winners of today's biggest betrayal competition." I disconnected the laptop and packed up my equipment while the crowd slowly dispersed. Some people were staring at Megan and Dominic with disgust, others with pity. A few were already posting about it on social media. As I walked toward the exit, I passed Susie. She was standing by herself, watching her husband and my wife console each other. "How do you feel?" I asked her. "Free," she said simply. "For the first time in months, I feel free." Outside, I loaded my equipment into my car and drove home. My phone was already buzzing with calls and texts. Richard, my parents, co-workers who'd heard about the incident. I ignored them all. At home, I poured myself a drink and sat on my back deck, watching the sun set over our suburban neighborhood. In a few hours, Megan would come home. We'd have a conversation that would end our marriage officially, but the real ending had happened months ago when she'd chosen Dominic over me. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just cold, practicing for when she was gone. 2 hours later, I heard her car in the driveway. She came through the front door quietly, like she was hoping to avoid me. But I was waiting in the living room, still in my clothes from the gym, still holding my drink. "We need to talk," she said. "Do we?" She sat down across from me, her eyes red from crying. "What you did today was cruel." "Was it? Or was it honest?" "It was public humiliation. It was revenge." "Yes, it was." I took a sip of my drink. "How did it feel?" "How did what feel?" "Being exposed, having everyone see who you really are." I leaned forward. "Because that's how I've felt for months. Every time someone made a joke about your gym friends. Every time someone asked me how I felt about my wife's new hobby. Every time I walked into a room and knew that people were talking about me behind my back. I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? Were you planning to leave me for him? Were you going to keep lying until I found out on my own? Were you just going to keep screwing him until you got bored?" She didn't answer. "It doesn't matter," I said. "It's over now. Everyone knows what you are. Everyone knows what he is. And everyone knows that I'm not the pathetic, clueless husband you thought I was." "What happens now?" "Now you pack your things and you leave. You go to Dominic's house or a hotel or wherever people like you go when their lies catch up with them." "This is my house too." "No, it's not. This house belongs to the woman I married 8 years ago. The woman who promised to love and honor me. You're just someone who looks like her." Megan started crying again, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, had been gone for months. This person sitting across from me was a stranger. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry everyone knows. You're sorry your perfect little fantasy got ruined." I finished my drink and set the glass down. "But you're not sorry for what you did. If I hadn't found out, you'd still be doing it." She didn't deny it. "Pack your things," I said again. "I want you gone tonight." She went upstairs and I heard her moving around, opening drawers and closets. 20 minutes later, she came down with 2 suitcases and a garment bag. "I'll come back for the rest next week." "No, you won't. Anything you leave behind goes to charity." She stared at me. "You really hate me." "No," I said. "I don't feel anything for you at all. That's what 8 years of marriage gets you when you throw it away for a gym membership and a man with nice abs." She walked to the door, then turned back. "Why are you so cold?" I smiled. "I told you. I was practicing." After she left, I sat in the quiet house, listening to the sounds of my neighborhood settling in for the night. Tomorrow, I'd call a lawyer. I'd change the locks. I'd start the process of untangling 8 years of shared life. But tonight, I just sat in the cold silence, finally at peace.